We are watching for new details on our top story. There is one of the centers where police are focused in their anti-terrorism investigation in Kingston, Ontario. This is a house on MacDonnell Street in Kingston. The force, we expect at some point a news release and also a news conference. We had heard 10 this morning. We are now hearing maybe 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's clear it's not pinned down exactly whenever it takes place, of course. We'll have it for you live on CBC News Network. But this is a story that has been developing overnight. And it is our national affairs editor, Chris Hall, who broke it, who has been leading our reporting on it, and joins me now live in Ottawa with more breaking details. Chris.
Yeah, Heather, our colleague Phil Ling, who has been working the phones through the night, has spoken to the father of a 20-year-old man. He confirms that his son has been arrested in connection with the anti-terrorism investigation, a 20-year-old man from Kingston. We also know that this family arrived in Canada in 2016 from Kuwait. They were privately sponsored refugees, but other than that, we don't have any more details. But the big news that we now know is that at least one person of the two has been charged as a 20-year-old male. The other, we understand, is a minor. We do not know the connection between the two of them exactly, but that's the news that I have for you at the moment.
Okay, that is certainly helping fill in the picture because there's so much we do not know. But as you've made clear, and we've heard from police thus far, it is an anti-terror investigation. So what does that involve, Chris?
Well, first of all, they've been at this now since before Christmas, and they were following up leads and involved both the Kingston police locally, obviously the city police, who are now in charge of the perimeter controlling the scene where the investigation is taking place. We also know that they contacted the FBI, possibly two reasons for that. The FBI does a lot of surveillance and has capacities that the Canadian forces don't necessarily have. But in these types of investigations, particularly since this is so close to the border, they brought in the FBI as well. We tried to talk to the FBI last night. They referred us back to the RCMP, so that's the information we are working with. Last night we talked to a number of people in public safety and in the RCMP, and the constant theme, Heather, throughout was that this is a contained situation. In other words, it is contained to the Kingston area, that there was no what they called imminent threat to public safety. They didn't explain what that meant, but that there was no concern that they felt they had to rush in to make these investigations. They have been doing this, as I said, for literally a month or more, and they were moving in, I was told last night, because they were finally ready and had everything in line.
So as you say, everyone referring questions and comments back to the RCMP, which is why that briefing from them and the latest statement release is going to be so key. At this point, Chris, although again with the word of that breaking, a 20-year-old man originally from Kuwait arriving in Canada in 2016, that helps answer some about one of the suspects in this, but there's still many questions outstanding for you. What are the key things that we need to yet know?
Well, two things. First of all, and the most important one is, getting the names confirmed and what it was specifically that they are accused of doing. We know from the past that there have been issues around about an attempt to bomb a Via rail train that was coming from New York City back to Canada. We don't know if that's the kind of investigation that's going on here. Last night it was referred to as a national security probe. So we don't know if this is a conspiracy, a plot that was trying to be hatched, or people were trying to buy explosive materials, for example. Those are the kinds of answers that we're trying to get and waiting to get from the RCMP today.
Chris, as you're talking, I think Phil must be continuing to work the phones, because we are going to hear an audio interview with the father very soon, because he did get that on the record. But we're getting a name now that we are able to use, and this is the name, 20-year-old, is it Hussam Eddin Alzahabi? Is that the name that you've been hearing?
That is the one. That is one of them, yes.
Okay, 20-year-old. This is what's coming in on our CBC News sources now. 20-year-old Hussam Eddin Alzahabi arrested, according to his father, who confirmed, as you said to yourself and to Phil, currently completing high school upgrades at Loyalist Collegiate and Vocational Institute. And his family, as you said, from Kuwait, they do not consider themselves Syrian refugees. This is all part of the interview that we will get on the air just as soon as we can. It's just been completed. I want to bring up as well, in all all of this, the only response we've heard thus far, at least publicly, Chris, has been the statement we got last night from Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale. If we can bring that up, and you talked about no imminent threat. He was very key to this statement was the reassurance that this is contained, that there is no imminent threat, and that the threat level nationally is not being raised from the medium level at which it sat since about 2014, late 2014. But as you look into the statement, because you would have parsed it, what do we derive from it? It sounds like there's no threat, therefore it's not a broader network than two people, or how are you interpreting it?
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to tell us, is that this was an investigation that was specifically centered on a group of people or two people in the Kingston area only. I think what the Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale was trying to do last night was to say two things. One is that they are constantly monitoring to ensure that public safety is maintained, and that they cooperate closely across a broad range of public security agencies, including, he mentioned CSIS. We don't have any confirmation that CSIS was actually involved in this particular investigation. But clearly, they're trying to be vigilant with this. And as I said, it's been clear from the conversations that I've had and others here in our office have had over the past 12 hours or so, that this has been ongoing for months, that they were aware of some activity. We don't know how they were tipped off or why these individuals came to the attention of the government or to public safety agencies. But clearly, it was something that they were trying to follow up. And the length of the investigation sort of shows that they were trying to tie up any loose ends to make sure they had an airtight case. I might mention one other thing, because it has made it into the news. Residents in Kingston, starting about January 4th, were concerned about this low hum of a low-flying aircraft that was flying without lights. There was an initial thought perhaps it was a drone. It later turned out from an aviation enthusiast who lives in the area, who has a radar, that when it pinged back with its registration, it turned out it was an RCMP plane, registered to the RCMP, a Pilatus plane, which is used in surveillance really around the world, mostly because it can stay in the air for hours at a time. This radar, this enthusiast said it was flying between 5,000 and 9,000 feet, which is relatively low. We now know that that was involved in the investigation. It is not clear whether the fact that this was disclosed by this enthusiast in Kingston, this airline enthusiast, if that in any way made them speed up the investigation. My information is that it did not. They were preparing to close in anyway, but that was why that plane was in the air. So people in Kingston can rest assured they won't be awakened in the middle of the night anymore by this plane, at least not on this investigation.
It was a real mystery for them, wasn't it, for weeks? Listen, Chris, fantastic work on all of this, and come on back. I know you're continuing to work your sources, and we'll be back if there is any breaking detail. I just want to recap again before we move on exactly what Chris Hall has just told us, the breaking news and the confirmation that we can tell you that it is one of the people arrested in this anti-terror investigation is a 20-year-old Hussam Eddin Alzahabi, arrested on terror-related charges, and this is according to his father Amin, who spoke to our producer in Ottawa, Philip Ling, confirmed now completing high school upgrades at Loyalist Collegiate and Vocational Institute. And according to the father, this is a little bit of a clarification from our initial reporting. Family's been living in Canada since July of 2017. They were in Kuwait from 2008 to 2017, in Syria before that, but the father does not consider the family Syrian refugees, and made that very stress that in speaking to CBC News. We do have an audio interview with the father, which we are going to bring to you just as soon as we were able to process that for television coverage, of course, so you will hear him describe what has happened. The second person, we understand, a minor, not identified, believed to be a classmate at the high school. Again, further detail coming, and we expect a CBC News will be there live for the RCMP news conference as it occurs today in Kingston. Stay with us for the ongoing breaking developments.